With that, with the players being unable to contact the club or the Bulldogs or Port Adelaide, is there a concern as the season moves on how those players can be supported by support network and the things the AFL or the clubs can put in place to help those guys from here?
Yeah, I'm not close enough to it anymore to know exactly what those processes are, but no doubt the club and the AFL Players Association has processes put in place. I just can't tell you what they are. And I think the 34 players and their families will be very good resources for each other as well. But one of the difficulties is that as a player, you become very institutionalised in your lifestyle. So you get up at 7, you go to the club, you train, you come home at 4, and you do it day after day, and you know basically you're told what to eat, you're told to drink, you're told where to train, how to sleep. I think that lack of routine will be hard for them to work through.
We'll come to you next, but you were first, yeah?
James, do you think, in answer to one of Tracey's last questions about the lessons, do you think the structural issue of having a high-performance team over here, independent from the senior coach, that doesn't feel like a system that would go forward?
I actually disagree with that. I don't think the senior coach should be responsible for management of those people at all. My level of knowledge of medicine and of the medical department is tiny. I'm not a doctor. And I'm not trying to resolve myself from what happened. I'm just saying I wouldn't think in the future coaches would be in charge of those things at all. You need experts, and you need a head of football who's really like dot the I's, cross the T's, process-driven person, who's got some charisma in the league. But the most important job for the coach now in the club is to be so close to his players that they play for him. He's to set the agenda for the game plan, and he's to get his coaches coaching the way he wants to. And then he's the public face. So that's a big job in terms of time commitment. So look after the nitty-gritty and intricacies of, let's say, a supplement program now. As other coaches will say, they don't know what their players are given, and they actually don't want to know what their players are given, because then that leaves the point where if you do know, then you have to go and research it. Now, John Worsfold Essendon has got no time to go and research the latest supplement. That needs to be done by somebody else.
Two questions, James. But firstly, did any of the players ever express concern about the program? That's the first question. And the second question is, with the benefit of hindsight, is there something in particular that stands out as where you perhaps could have twigged to something going wrong?
I think one of the things I wish I had done better was Stephen Dank approved AID 9604 was the drug that supplement everyone thought was the big issue. He went, and he wasn't allowed to give that to the. Went and got the wider documentation, showed it to Bruce Reid, and Bruce Reid approved and ticked it off, which Bruce Reid eventually did tick it off. He waved a bit of paper under my nose at training one day and said, "I've got the approval." Now I wish, instead of waving under my nose and saying, "Oh, I saw WADA approved on this document," I wish I had got that document, looked at it, checked its authenticity, because there is a suggestion that that document is not authentic. I think if we had discovered then that document wasn't authentic or wasn't what we thought it was, that would have set off a number of red alarm bells that would have said that's not what we do. And I think I would have been stronger in June or July when that meeting with David Evans and Ian Robson said, well, if he's still there, we're not working. Like, that's how strong we had to be. We were very strong, but we probably should have said, well, if they're there, we're not. You make a choice.
I'm intrigued about the 13 players who didn't take part. Was there any repercussion from them? And well, first off, do you know why they didn't take part in the program?
I know the younger guys. So what football clubs' policy most of the time, even when I was there, was when you're a younger player, they don't really want to give you any supplementation at all. They want to let your body adapt and just grow and just do it naturally. So there's probably 5 or 6 new guys, so they didn't do it. Jason Winderlick had a phobia for needles. So did David Zaharakis. And some of the guys just didn't like taking supplements. I mean, whether supplements are taken orally, whether they're taken by injection, whether they're taken whichever way, some people just want to eat naturally as well. So it was a choice, and that was the choice they made.
Yep.
Sorry, one question. Given that it's it's known that Melbourne had basically the same program with the same staff, and the 12 other clubs have very similar programs. How do you cope, especially given that you said you were silent for effectively 3 years, how do you cope with the constant suggestion that it was only you and Essendon that had this program? And this was only repeated on Tuesday night by Carolyn Wilson.
Well, it's disappointing and it's not right, but I think we have to own our responsibility. I mean, the program that we ran led to what happened. So it's very disappointing and it's not right, but you can only take you can only know what's going on in your backyard and take responsibility, and that's what we need to do.
Do you think the wider code is appropriate for a team sport such as the AFL?
I think the classification of the wider code is very big and very broad. So there's elements of it that are right. You know, you got certain drugs or supplements that shouldn't be taken. So that part of it's right, but there are elements of it that aren't right. I'm probably not the right person to ask, to be honest, because I haven't read the wider code in detail. I don't know what the alternative is. But it would seem that this sanction, firstly, the evidence and the way it was put together is wrong and it shouldn't have happened the way it had. And secondly, the fact that the players are all, you know, that no significant fault was given is just ridiculous. When what more could they do? They were told by Stephen Dank that everything was compliant. And they were told they were being given thymomodulin. So thymomodulin is something you're allowed to take. So every time they get thymomodulin, should they be testing it in a laboratory? I think that's the ridiculous nature of this decision. That let's say they were duped, what more could they have done?
I was fascinated to hear in the 2011 discussion that you had about peptides and were called in to talk about that. Do you think that, you know, potentially, I don't know if this is true or not, that you saw legal supplements and the peptides and things like that as maybe a future way that everyone would be going one way and to gain an advantage? And if that is true, do you think that might have, when these kind of concerns were surfacing and things like that, that made you maybe want to keep going with them to try and keep that very legal competitive edge? Were they something that you were fascinated by or really wanted to try and explore as a legal way to...
I certainly wasn't fascinated.
Oh, that's not what I mean, interest at all.
But I was certainly of the mind that if there's a legal advantage, whether that be supplementation, whether that be a training method, whether that be, you know, a game plan, then that's fine. But it had to be within the rules. I was very clear what those rules were, and at no time did I ever want to go outside the rules. Peptides weren't necessarily the panacea or the greatest thing that was going to help us. It was just one of many things that we looked at as a club.
I'm just interested, James, in your first press conference, you used the words, "I take full responsibility." I'm just interested why you've been reluctant to use those same words since that time.
Well, because I was told to say those words, and that might be a cop-out, but I was told to say those words by the PR person at the time. And I think when I look back, that I don't think it's fair for me to take full responsibility. I think if you're expecting the head coach to take full responsibility, then you're saying he's the head of the tree and he's running the football club. At no stage was I the head of the tree or running the football club. In fact, I was second in line to run the football department. And whether the responsibility around giving players supplements is not my responsibility. Now, I accept that as a leader in the club, doesn't absolve you of responsibility, but it doesn't lean to full responsibility either.
Are you seeking answers on behalf of players from Stephen Dank?
I think we've long since trying to seek answers from Stephen Dank. We'd love him to give answers, but he hides behind something all the time. He promises to show things and they just don't turn up.
Yep.
What was your last conversation with Stephen Dank?
I can't remember. It was in August 2012. I'm not sure what that... I didn't walk down and say you're sacked. Were your contracts... No. No.
Yep.
As a player to take just by Malcolm, was it? Why weren't they disclosing that to you started testers like they were required? Was there a directive from the club to not disclose that information?
There's no directive from the club, and I think you read... And I think there was a mistake by some of the players, but if you read the CAS report, it says that 34 players didn't disclose. Well, 34 players weren't tested in that year, so only 21 of the players were tested. So that absolves, there's 13 that weren't tested. With another 5 or 6, and I don't know the exact number, but this is after calling the players, 5 or 6 who weren't tested, they were tested, but they weren't tested during time when they're taking the time on modulon. So I think the form says there's a certain amount of time, what have you taken, right? And the others say that they were in a hurry, they didn't always put down what they were taking. It's part of you come off the track, you've got to give a urine sample, you've got to get to a meeting. They just put down a few things. So it's definitely a mistake, but to say it was sinister or deliberate, I think is a step too far.
What about with Dank? You had text messages and stuff. Can you elaborate with all them?
Yeah, sure. I sent there was 7,000 text messages between myself and the football department in the time we're talking. Around about 100 of those were between Stephen Dank and myself. 75% were from him. No, I didn't always respond to his text messages. Not one of those text messages talked about performance-enhancing drugs, illegal activity. There was some supplement talk on those text messages, but it was never about cheating the system. And so when you read the text messages, you go through them. That doesn't point. That's running a department. That's being part of running a department. That is not trying to cheat the system. And so you can present information in a way you want to present it when you look at it as a whole. And I think a lot of those instances was presented as a small part without the context around it.
So you guys weren't kind of convoluting to devise this toxic culture, so to speak?
Well, if you read the text messages, I can't see how you can say that.
Yep.
James, I'm confused with the whole where Essendon fit into this, because there's a lot being directed at the AFL and other parts, but Essendon are the one who set up the structure with not you looking after all of the medical side of it. That's asking you to take full responsibility. You're remaining loyal to it. Nothing's really come out about the fact that I was only running the football department of players. The program was run through another channel through the CEO. It seems like I don't understand why your loyalty remained with Essendon, given they've set you up to this position from what you said tonight.
I don't think they've set me up to this position, but I can only say that it has been said on a number of occasions, and what gets published gets published. I mean, the disappointing thing in this is that a neutral story is very rarely published in a newspaper or talked about. It's one side or the other. When people talk about this, they're on one side or the other. It's not neutral. And there's probably only a handful of journalists who take a neutral position. The fact is that I made mistakes, the club made a mistake. We set the ball rolling, but we didn't keep pushing it down the hill. It had a lot of hands.
Why did you remain so loyal to the club and not telling the story until now, when the club was walking you down a particular path? And someone asked a question about whistleblowing before. For you to just stand up and say, hey, look, we wanted this guy out, we wanted him out. The club finances took priority over the culture and the players' welfare, and you could draw that inference. It just appears that there are opportunities for you to come out before this.
Yeah, I suppose I have the view that I still, up until a couple of months before I resigned, that I thought we could work through this as a club and we could tell our story at the end of this, and the players would get off. Because the most important thing in this is not me coming out and defending myself. That's what I believe. The most important thing in this is trying to get the players found not guilty, get them back playing football and give them their lives back. Because their career goes for 7 to 10 years. 3 years of their careers was destroyed. Now it's a 4th year. So that was my priority, knowing that at a time I'd get a chance to tell my story. Now, unfortunately, I've had to tell my story when Armageddon's hit and the players are in a terrible position. But I do have loyalty to the club. It's been my life. It's my grandfather's life, it's my father's life, it's my life, with my life. So that might be blind loyalty, but it might be, people see it as silly, but I genuinely love the Essendon Football Club, and the reason I took that deal in 2013 because I thought it was the best thing to enable the club to move on.
2 more questions. Yep.
James, Paul Hamilton hasn't been mentioned much at all. With Dank reporting through to him, what insights has he given you and how much awareness did he have of that?
I haven't spoken to Paul since he left the club in 2012.
Sorry, you, then you. Last two questions. Yeah.
What role do you think the media has played in this clearly a witch hunt, and what do you think they can learn from the process that's happened and the effect on the players' welfare?
I don't think that the media will learn much out of this. The media are the media, and they will report what information they're given, and they will twist it not twist it, but they'll present it in the fashion that they think will best serve their media department or best serve their media outlet. I mean, the media's role, yes, is to be truthful and be correct, but the media's role, I think they believe, is to sell a story. I think the people who are giving that information and leaking that information and corrupting the integrity of the investigation, they're the people that have to learn something. And if you're the AFL, you would have to sit back, in my opinion, and say, we did not handle this in the best possible fashion.
Yeah, last question.
Do you think that if this hadn't happened to Essendon, Stephen Dank and all that kind of thing, that it was inevitable that it would have happened at some stage to some club? And do you think the AFL were negligent in not mitigating that risk?
The AFL undertook blood tests on the Essendon players in 2012 and sent them to Cologne for testing because they had a suspicion that something was going on at Essendon that wasn't right. We didn't know this, they didn't tell us this, and we wish they had told us this. Those blood tests came back negative, and so the players didn't test positive or anything. At that stage, if the AFL had said, right, there's an issue here, come and see the club, told them something, I think there'd be a different story. If Stephen Dank had gone somewhere else, or would this happen somewhere else? Maybe, but this is the worst possible situation of everything happening the wrong way. From the Essendon Football Club not doing the right thing, or not, having not the right protocols for something happening that shouldn't have happened, through to manipulation at the highest levels of government, manipulation with the SARB, manipulation with the AFL, to get an outcome. So, would it ever happen? I've just seen it. Everything went wrong. I don't think anything can go wrong to that extent ever again. I'd hope not.
In fact, that press conference should probably never have happened because Asada hadn't even done 1 minute of investigating yet. Why would you stand up and announce to the world you've got this massive investigation that you hadn't begun? You don't know what you're going to find yet, They may have found more, they may have found less, but it was a terrible way to flag the whole start of it. We have to go. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it. And, yeah.